Welcome to Part 3, Ron's Lehigh River Valley Models, Easton, Pennsylvania. Flying high over Phillipsburg, New Jersey, we are looking directly west over Easton PA. At right and stretching to the west and center picture is Route 22, completed at Harrisburg State Capitol in the late 50s. Northampton Street in the center was the old Route 22 till the early 50s. The Lehigh River is at left. Red ink started a flow for the railroads when the interstate highway systems were completed. Railroads could not compete with the millions of dollars awarded to the highways by the federal government. A view from Front Street in Easton looking east over the new Delaware Bridge. Constructed in the mid-30s, opened in 1938. During the Roosevelt years, it languished here for almost 15 years before construction was completed to Harrisburg. The first obstacle in Route 22's drive west was the Easton Cemetery, founded in 1849. Did the rumors ever fly? At first they wanted to dig through, then bridge over it. Finally they did the sensible thing and just went around it. Lafayette College is upper left, was started construction here in the mid-1830s. A time exposure on Cemetery Curve. The speed limit is 35 miles per hour, which almost nobody obeys. The Cemetery Curve lives up to its name. A view of the new section of the cemetery in 1900. The same view 120 years later. A lot of people came into the world and left it in those 120 years. Further west shows the whole cemetery in Route 22 interchange with Easton's 13th Street. At left is the former Simon Silk Mill and Fitzer Chemical Pigment Plant in 1978. The silk plant is now upscale apartments and varied uses. A Conrail train on its way to Eastern Iron and Scrap Metal in 1983. Note remains of coal trestle. The Fitzer Pigment Plant is just behind the engine. The Simon Silk Mill in 1900. It was served by Lehigh Valley Railroad's Eastern and Northern branch. Its size must have employed hundreds. Phillipsburg, Easton, Bethlehem, and Allentown all had large employment at their silk factories. When the Industrial Museum opened in 2016, a large exhibit was included about the silk industry. At the end of the Eastern Northern branch, a Lehigh Valley station was located here at one time. Cemetery Curve is here today. This aerial, looking up the Lehigh River, shows a westbound Lehigh Valley Railroad freight train. The caboose is in the middle of the Delaware River Bridge. The engines are passing by the Southeastern engine house. Phillipsburg is in the foreground. The Easton Dam was built in the 1840s to supply water for the Delaware Canal. The Delaware Canal was constructed to Bristol, just north of Philadelphia. Like the Lehigh Canal, it was operated by water locks. Looking over the Northampton Street Bridge to Easton in April 1962, the houses that left on Front Street still have another 10 years left till they will be demolished about 1971. A view from the Lehigh and Hudson Bridge looking north, showing Easton's Front Street houses. A model of this location on the train layout. By the year 2000, the houses on Front Street were long gone, having been torn down in 1971-72. View of Front Street structures in 1966 from Hotel Easton looking east. View of the same area under model construction. The flood of 1895 from Mount Ida shows the old covered bridge. The supports were weakened by floodwaters and rebuilt the following year into the present bridge. Note the crowd at the point to Front Street Home. The Front Street Home during the 1936 flood. It appears to be a few feet higher than the 1895 flood. Easton is hit every few decades by floods from the Lehigh and Delaware rivers. The Easton Dam was built for the Delaware Canal. It was still built of wood at this time in 1959, that would rebuild as a concrete structure in 1968. Notice the Med Ed sign. They once had their offices in downtown Easton until about 1970. Med-Ed electric sign reflected in the Lehigh River. This area was taken in 1961. Looking directly north, Route 22 and Lafayette College is at the top. This is the area to be modeled in 1/4 inch to the foot scale. From Northampton Street down to the Lehigh River and 4th Street to the Delaware River. On the model, the Lehigh River is the walkway between North and Southeastern. Hotel Easton in 1925. The finishing touches are being put on the Hotel Easton at this time. Hotel Easton model on the site. It is the largest model on the train layout. It's the fall of 1951, and General MacArthur visits Easton PA. Here he is welcomed at the western end of the Free Bridge by Pennsylvania Governor John Fine. A parade of 1950 Cadillacs led the way. The general was a very controversial figure, having been relieved of duty by President Truman during the Korean War. MacArthur's parade was headed to the Allentown Fair. Since part of Route 22 was under construction, the old Route 22 and William Penn Highway was taken. Easton Circle, about 1898. Two trolleys are 180 degrees apart. To the north, they serve Lafayette College. To the east, they went into Phillipsburg, New Jersey. To the south, they served Southeastern. To the west, they went to Allentown, PA, along William Penn Highway. 200 miles of trolley tracks once served the Lehigh River Valley. Thomas Penn, in a letter from England to Deputy Governor Hamilton in September 1751, expressed the desire that the new town be named Easton, and whenever a new county should come into existence, it should be called Northampton. A survey was begun in May of 1752 by William Parsons and Thomas Skull, which laid out the town. The town grew rapidly, and in need of a county courthouse, one was constructed in Center Square in 1765. It was demolished in 1861 when the present courthouse was finished. In 1900, the new Soldiers and Sailors Monument was completed, a monument to the Civil War, which had ended only 35 years before. Many in the crowd were probably veterans of it. A rededicated Civil War monument in the year 2000. No difference to the crowd than the 1900 dedication. The Easton Limited Trolley in 1949 at the northeastern end of the circle. Trolley service to Easton was eliminated in 1949. All trolley service in the Lehigh Valley ceased in 1953. Car number 1030 on display in the Easton Circle in 1941. Advertising a new service, Allentown to Philadelphia service, every hour on the hour. Car 1030 is now in a museum in New England. Bush and Bull department store on the northwest corner of Center Square in 1900. Woolworth's department store moved to this location in 1937. Note tracks in the street and horse droppings. Watch where you step. A model of the Bush and Bull store in 1984. Looking west on Northampton Street in the mid-60s, Woolworth's is on the right. The store left Easton in the early 1980s. Almost every town in America once had a Woolworth's 5 and dime store. This was their headquarters in New York City. It was built in 1913 and paid for in cash, about $13 million. For a short time, it was the tallest building in the world. This aerial view was taken in 1959, shows the county courthouse and jail. On the left, Easton City Hall, and the upper right, Walnut Street, crosses diagonally across the photo. A CBS movie, The Dane Curse, is being formed at the county courthouse in 1978. The time period is in the 1920s, and the only thing missing are the trolley tracks that were torn up in 1949-50 on Walnut Street. It's spring at the courthouse, and political winds are blowing to the right. Conservatives are very, very happy. Wait, it's fall, and political winds are blowing to the left. Liberals are very, very happy. It's politics. Go figure. A civil rights protest is at Easton City Hall in 1962. Looking north, South 3rd Street, Easton, in 1962. Looking north at night, South 3rd Street, in 1962. The model view, looking up South 3rd Street, approximately 1962. A close-up view of South 3rd Street in 1958. Note Packard dealership and Pep Boys auto parts store. The Pep Boys store in 1976. During the 1955 flood, you could pick up your auto parts by boat. Looking down South 3rd Street in 1982. Sears and Roebuck's left a few years later to the Phillipsburg Mall. The previous aerial shows the Central New Jersey passenger train stopped at the station in 1961. In the early 1950s, the company purchased about a dozen of these diesels. For a time, they had the title of the railroad's most powerful engines. They all had Statue of Liberty's emblems painted on their noses and sides. Quarter-inch model of the Central New Jersey station on location in 1973. The station was in full operation in this night view in 1962. It closed about 1967 with loss of passenger service. A view of the full moon setting behind the station in 1974, a prelude of what was to come. The arson fire that destroyed the station, Labor Day weekend, 1975. This view taken after the fire shows how the station was built over South 4th Street. The city had this structure demolished. Note freight station rear. Another arson fire waiting to happen. A center-bound city trolley under the Easton station about 1925. Note center posts holding up Easton station. Support posts are still there today but cut down about 3 feet above street level. O-scale model of the freight station. There were 2 tracks on the east side and 1 on the west side. Lack of model space prevented them from being put in on this model. The arson fire waiting to happen happened. It's June 17, 1977, and somebody lit the match. Firemen spray water on the last embers. The city had it demolished after the fire was put out. A view looking down to South 4th Street after the fire. A view of 12 employees who worked at the freight station about 1900. Note the boxcars. Lincoln pin couplers on the Valley car. C&J freight and passenger stations looking east in 1900. Note Lehigh Valley Station across the Lehigh River. Looking down South 4th Street in Easton toward the Easton Station. It's 1966, and in 5 years, all these structures will be demolished. Looking up South 4th Street from the roof of the passenger station 2 years before the fire that destroyed it. All these buildings have been demolished. Sheridan Motor Inn to the right is under construction. An evening sunset view of the Sheridan in 1980. These 3 buildings are at the corner of South 4th and Northampton Street in 1978. The center building was known as the Mohican Market, and it got torched in 1992. South 4th Street in Easton under construction, showing models almost completed. The Mohican Market is in the center. A model of the Northampton County Historical Society building at South 4th and Ferry Street. One of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, George Taylor House at South 4th Street and Ferry Street in 1900. The Taylor Home in 1982. Ken Brader's music store was there for many, many years. Just across the street from the Taylor home sat the Taylor School building. This photo was taken about 1910. A fellow I once knew told me he learned to swear in 5 languages when he attended the school in the 40s and 50s. Such was the immigrant population at the time. It was demolished in 1961-62. Model of the Taylor School in 1/4-inch scale. St. John's Lutheran Church on Ferry Street still exists today. Metropolitan Edison Company in Easton in 1959 along Lehigh Drive. The new plant was constructed at Portland, PA, near Delaware Water Gap in the early 50s. At bottom is Lehigh Valley's Abbott Street Yard. These tracks enabled Jersey Central trains to deliver coal to the Easton Power Plant on Lehigh Drive. Quite a steep grade, they couldn't handle too many cars at one time. A view of the Lehigh and Hudson Bridge looking west to the Mount Ida rock cut. A fish ladder is under construction on the Easton Dam in 1992 to allow the shad to get in the upper Lehigh. Looking west from the Mount Ida rock cut in 1966. It's the early 1870s at the intersection of Easton South 3rd Street Bridge over the Lehigh River and Route 611. Right at the corner, the Lehigh Valley Depot Hotel stood for many years. Built about 1860 and demolished by 1930, it was operated by Thomas and Samuel Marsteller. The lower level of the double-tier bridge over the Delaware River once had their track crossing at grade in front of the hotel and crossing South 3rd Street. The rock cut through Mount Ida was filled in about 1870 when the Lehigh and Susquehanna came through. It became part of the Jersey Central in the mid-1870s. A model of the Lehigh Valley Depot on site in 1982. The same view 66 years earlier. The structure and center is pinch gas storage facility. This is a model of the structure storing the gas. It was produced in Phillipsburg and stored here, highly compressed. This view looking west from the back of the Lehigh Valley observation car shows the 1875 bridge over the Delaware as single track. It was taken about 1935. The Mount Ida rock cut in 1900. Route 611 curves around the base. We're on the Jersey Central Bridge looking east. Once there were 2 rock cuts here. Over time, all the rocks were cleared away. Looking east on the Central in 1949, there were 2 double slip switches for Lehigh and Hudson trains and a connection with the Lehigh Valley Railroad. This signal bridge controlled movements of Lehigh and Hudson trains through the Mount Ida rock cut. It was taken down about 1969. RS3 models crossing the double slip switches at the Mount Ida rock cut. Lead model is an Atlas, almost correct color. Rear model is a Weaver, much too dark. Jersey Central F3 units crossing through the Mount Ida rock cut in 1948. Lehigh and Hudson RS3 Alco units, eastbound, headed to the double slip switches in 1964. It's 1972 and the Central New Jersey has abandoned all lines in Pennsylvania. Borrowed power from the Norfolk and Western is on the connecting track. Note removal of double slip switches. A westbound Jersey Central model is crossing South 3rd Street in Easton. Phillipsburg, New Jersey is in the distance. 774 was the last Camelback to run the Central. It was scrapped in the late 50s. A Conrail switch engine in 1985 was moving a cut of cars on the old Jersey Central. The station platform was demolished later that year. A nighttime self-portrait just after passenger service ended in 1961. A Black River and Western fan trip crossing 611 in 1986 at the Mount Ida Rock Cut. A westbound passenger train on the old platform about 1895. Number 356 is a brand new engine built at Southeastern in March 1895. It was scrapped by June 1929. Waiting to charge east, brand new diesels from the American Locomotive Company in 1949. Near tracks is the line to the 1875 bridge, which is just about to be demolished. A westbound passenger train had just left the station in 1920. Engine 2007 was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1906. It was scrapped in 1923. Note Jersey Central train and the early Easton Tower. The brand new Black Diamond Express on display at Easton Station in 1896. Locomotive 424 was built at Southeastern in October 1886 and rebuilt for Diamond service April 1896. It went into service in May 14, 1896. Only a few feet and 63 years separate these two pictures at the Easton Station. All Lehigh Valley passenger trains service ended in February 1961. A postcard view of Easton Station in 1910. Notice the image of the house that left on top of the hill. Model and photo were taken in 1983. The Lehigh Valley's new station platform was under construction in 1925. Structure in the center of South 3rd Street is Malarkey's Hotel, a one-time favorite of canalers, especially the bar rooms. Newly completed of upper platform and waiting rooms, the early station at the end of Canal Street was demolished in 1945. Passenger service was gone for 20 years before a Conrail contractor demolished the waiting rooms in 1985. It's single track today. A model of the streamlined Black Diamond at Easton Station. This is a two-rail Weaver model. A wreck at the Easton Station January 1979 nearly took out the Easton Tower. An eastbound train crossing the Delaware River Bridge went into emergency. Cars had to go somewhere. An eastbound Lehigh Valley freight train at the tower in November 1975. Swifty Meat Packing Company is across Canal Street. A westbound Conrail freight passing the rubble of Easton Tower. It was demolished in one day, on January 28, 1998. A quarter-inch scale model of Easton Tower. Canal Street is in the background. Lehigh Valley Railroad had towers every few miles in its heyday. I was sorry to see them go. The old signal bridge was the next to go. The tower is just to the left of the crane. Note new signal replacement. The commissary building in 1982. Darning car meals were prepared here and small repairs were made in the near building. Note tower, signal bridge, and station at left. Conrail freight in 1982, passing the commissary building eastbound. The commissary was demolished in November 1982. Model of the commissary. Note Swift Meat Packing Plant. Lehigh Valley PAs are central locomotive kits. Switcher NW2s are all nation, and RS3 is the Weaver model. Our next video will feature Southeastern, where locomotives were built to the year 1900.